some relevant pieces. We do see an interesting inclusion in this cloth deck. Rotom V feels like it could kind of go against what this deck is trying to do in terms of, using those first turns, especially going second to attack. Albeit, there are some ups and downsides, and over on Tiger's side does prize 5 Pokemon. Some of these important, of course, the Iron Thorns does play multiple copies of it. Of course, the full for having that Pokemon to be in the active spot, a key strategy that Tiger wants to execute. We'll see who goes first, and more importantly, how these early turns shape out for both these competitors.
Does play 2 copies of that Technical Machine Evolution, though, which is key, as one of them was prized. And as you mentioned, that Rotom, if you end up going first, can be pretty good. But if you don't, then that's a problem. But what do we see in the active spot? Not an Iron Thorns EX.
It is that Radiant Alakazam, of course, Painful Spoons, a great way for Dragapult to move some of the damage counters around just a little bit better. And importantly, 130 HP means that something like the Toxic Subjugation in combination with the Hisuian Sneasler plus the Brute Bonnet's Toxic Powder means that there's not the threat of a turn 1 knockout on something like Drippy. In fact, not much of a threat happening here as Cor just benches a Pokemon, attaches an energy, and passes on things over to Tiger, giving him the opportunity to have a great setup, especially since Arven can find the powerful ace-spec, that precious trolley.
That precious trolley, so precious indeed. Being able to just fill up your bench right off the bat. I think Tiger's going to be pretty happy to not see a very explosive turn by Cor, but the reason was Cor had 3 double turbo energy in his hand and an Ultra Ball, so if he had gone for a Squawk or something along those lines, he definitely would have been in trouble. So now we're about to see Tiger get a pretty decent setup. If he has an energy in his hand combined with that Arven and Technical Machine Evolution, we could see him basically have a full setup ready to go. However, the issue comes in powering up the Dragapult DX and finding a follow-up Crispin, as well as retreating that Alakazam.
So Tiger will take that opportunity, of course, to check through the deck. We'll see a few of those Pokemon are prized. And this is why we see the thicker line of the Dragapult EX, especially with the Dracloak. This deck has gone through a lot of differentials in terms of how it's been built. Originally, players were playing this with the Xatu to power up Dragapult. Then we saw things with, just the Pidgeot EX and Neo Upper Energy. And now we've come full circle to, a slower approach. This reminds me of some of the old Wobbuffet decks where you've got these Pokemon like Iron Thorns that shut down abilities while you build up a powerful Pokemon. Dragapult is no exception to that definition of a powerful Stage 2 EX Pokemon.
Now we did see Precious Trolley only for 2 Pokemon because the other 2 Drippies were already in the hand. But interestingly enough, we're not seeing the Toedscool hit the board to be evolved into that Toedscroll. So Tiger not really valuing that Slime ability to stop things like Rescue Stretcher, right, from being a factor. So we'll have to see if that tech is ever wished to be had in play.
It would prevent Cor from ever being able to recover these Pokemon from the discard pile, since that is the only way to get things back thanks to that Night Stretcher. And you see Cor now having to get rid of some key resources. That Regidrago, just there for that ability, of course, Dragon's Horde to fill the hand back up. Doesn't need it now. Instead, will use it as one of those 2 cards to be discarded off Ultra Ball. And immediately, we're seeing that Precious Trolley come to the front of the hand. Could this be something like a Luminion angle to fetch out a powerful supporter if there's something like Arven? A lot of one-of supporters here for Cor. Pablo, talk me through sort of the thought process behind playing some of these one-of supporters. There's a good amount of them here in the list.
I mean, playing a lot of one-offs just gives you a lot of versatility, right? And it also comes with risk of you prizing the card that you need for a specific moment, but that's an accepted part of the game. It's something you play around, something you have to factor in with your decision making, and in a best of 3, it's very unlikely that you prize the right card at the wrong time twice in a row, right? So that's why playing a lot of one-offs can have a lot of risks, but also a lot of rewards. As we are seeing the Arven grabbing the Precious Trolley with the Luminion. Yeah, we're gonna see a full bench after that Area 0 gets played. We're about to see 6 Pokemon hit the board even.
Everything coming into play, and this is where a deck like Cloth has adjusted to really use this extra 3 bench slots so effectively. Now you can get down all these support Pokemon you want. You see Iron Bundle coming down, the Brute Bonnet, Hisuian Sneasler. You've got, potential to get Latias EX down to have pivots, and you still have space for even more Pokemon. And you also have that additional effect of the Terrapagos' unified beatdown attack being another way for you to pivot away from your poison strategy. And importantly, that final piece, Cor did grab that Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. So at a minimum here, Cor will be able to take the first prize cards of this game, no matter what Pokemon Tiger sends up, if he chooses to use that Iron Bundle.
Now, interestingly enough, no Latias, no Pheasantipity either as a way to protect from KOs. So maybe Cor already has them in his hand, but does know that he needs to be aggressive, right? The one thing that the poison extra damage doesn't help you knock out is a Dragapult TX, right? There's no way to get to 320 damage, which is the HP. So we're going to see the Iron Bundle, we're going to see a Drippy knockout. Very simple, but knocking out a Dragapult TX is going to be very, very difficult. And that damage from Phantom Dive on the bench really stacks up.
Especially with some of those lower HP Pokemon in play, a lot of Pokemon susceptible to being knocked out later in the game. And Cor also just leaving himself with two pretty unimpactful cards. Just an energy card and a switch card for the next turn will get a nice boost there if he draws that research, but no, draws into Squawkabilly EX. So a lot of pressure could be on Cor's side if Tiger is unable to put together a powerful attack. And an interesting decision to start the turn off, immediately bringing that Radiant Alakazam to the active spot. It does have a hefty 2 retreat cost and a Mind Ruler attack, but Cor maybe unintentionally keeping his hand low so he's not, being threatened by a knockout in return from that Mind Ruler attack.
Yeah, 20 damage per card in hand. I think Cor has around 4, so it wouldn't be enough to get a knockout. But we are going to see the Crispin, so we can see an attack. Maybe the Alakazam was promoted before the Crispin was found, and therefore just playing it super safe, right? No need to risk a 2-prizer in Iron Thorn Switch. Also want to wonder why that hit the board. Like, you want that to slow down all of this, right? But now that that hasn't been slowed down effectively, that Iron Thorns could prove to be a liability and just become fodder for Clough.
It is a very interesting choice since, it's not a great attacker in a spot like this too. Since you do have that weakness, you do also get knocked out from, just the Brute Bonnet plus a full bench unified beatdown, right? It would be exactly enough damage to take the knockout on that side of things. And we're actually just going to see the Alakazam attack into this Claw for just 100 damage total, 80 damage after the poison, because there were only 3 cards in hand here. And, while Cor's hand is not strong in this spot, just has a few trainer cards, he's essentially just been given a free turn at this spot. He can just go ahead and poison the Alakazam. Won't necessarily make a difference here since, the Clough is dealing more damage based off of it being poisoned with that Unhinged Scissors. But Cor is off to a 2-prize lead, and the great prize find there does find that Professor's Research to allow him to dig further on the next turn.
Great find indeed. Research will allow him to dig. Already has an energy in hand to have a follow-up attack. But this is where the problems begin, right? This presumably 320 HP Dragapult DX about to hit the board. The hand is just growing bigger and bigger, and there we see the Terra Orb, which allows you to search for a Terra Pokemon.
And now the question comes, right? Tiger has access to play a supporter card for turn, and this Clough wasn't knocked out, but Paulo, I gotta feel like this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that Pokemon having damage counters on it, and maybe knock it out with that bench damage thanks to Phantom Dive.
Yeah, if you have a boss, you could take down Luminion and play some damage here to get a 3-prize turn, overturn the price deficit. You could even take down Brute Bonnet and Clough, and I think a lot of people don't really value knocking out the Brute Bonnet too much. We are going to see that boss knocking out both attackers, which is pretty significant, right? And you can have some leftover damage, 3 damage counters to place on either Terrapagos, but you have to assume that whichever Terrapagos doesn't get any damage, that's the one that's going to be promoted.
Yeah, there's also a world where you could put these damage counters on the Pecharunt instead, right? So that further down the line, it gives you another access to a 2-prize turn. And Night Tiger has set this up pretty excellently, right? He can now just take 2-prize turns, or rather 4 prizes over the next 3 turns and be in a good spot. That will be a little bit more difficult thanks to Switch Card, a staple in almost all of these basic-only decks to allow you to not only pivot out, but heal some of those crucial damage counters, now allowing this Terrapagos to survive any hit from a Dragapult EX next turn.
That heal, super, super important. It's the reason why that Terrapagos was indeed promoted. Now, both players are going to be 2-hit KOing each other, right? But Tiger can build up to some damage. If Tiger does 200, to this Terrapagos and then goes boss onto his Luminion, he could potentially win the game within the next 2 turns.
So a big question here, I mean, for a lot of players, they see this Brute Bottom on the bench, the ability to, poison their opponent's active and put 10 more damage on it. While that does seem appealing, is there a world where that could backfire by putting poison damage on your own Terrapagos in a spot? Do you think it's worth putting extra damage counters when you're going to be taking a 2-hit knockout regardless onto Dragapult here?
I would definitely argue the answer is no, right? You just can't get to the 1-hit KO no matter what. So putting self-damage, it's extra damage counters as you mentioned, that probably wouldn't be a wise decision. It's only worth it if it's really going to help you get a crucial KO to help you win, right? Sometimes you have to do those things, even though you might not want to. But in this case, definitely I think we should see the Unified beatdown without the extra poison damage.
So a big thing to think about here is, of course, that Pecharunt on the bench. Since if this Terrapagos were to be knocked out for some reason next turn, and that Dragapult stays poisoned, then the Pecharunt gets promoted first, and then the Toxic Subjugation ability comes into play. So if for some reason, right, there was something like the Binding Mochi to boost the damage from this Terrapagos up to 290 with a full bench and poison, then that extra 50 damage from poison could be worth it. But I think without the Binding Mochi here, you're going to be just short of taking that knockout. And like you said, it's probably worth not putting those extra damage counters on. No matter how many years the game progresses, Pablo, 10 damage is still so important in the Pokemon TCG.
I'm fairly certain world championships have probably been won or lost by just 10 damage, right? So we are going to see the poison come into effect by that Brute Bonnet's Toxic Powder. So both players are poisoned. That Terrapagos needs 10 damage on it, and yeah, that 1 damage counter could play a role. Even if you just attack into the Terrapagos, then they get 10 more damage, and that's 10 damage away. So then it would force Cor to find another energy in order to retreat into a different attacker.
So we'll see, of course, those Recon Directive abilities be used every time the Dragapult's on the bench, or Dracloak, excuse me. It's a nice little boost to this deck. We've seen a lot of these Stage 2 EX Pokemon that have seen play have powerful abilities on the Stage 1 Pokemon. Gardevoir with that Curlia's Refinement, and the Dracloak as well, allowing this engine to flow without committing more deck spots to extra engines that can be hard to set up.
I'm pretty sure that's the reason why this deck works. Like, a lot of people have started experimenting with this sort of like Iron Thorns, Technical Machine Evolution, heavy Crispin deck. But the reason this works is because after you evolve to your Stage 1, right, you have that Recon Directive to keep finding your resources, keep finding you those game-winning cards, whereas other decks don't have powerful Stage 1s like Dragapult, and that's why it might not be as effective. Something like Hydreigon, which we've seen a lot of players experiment with for a long time, I don't think it's as effective because they don't have Zuelos with Recon Directive themselves.
So it looks like Tiger has chosen to play a few of these Pokegear, find some different supporter cards. It will be Arven as the choice for turn, and here we go, a key card as that item of choice, that Lost Vacuum. Tiger could go either way here, as that Lost Vacuum allows him to either Lost Zone the Stadium card or that Tool card. Pablo, in your opinion, which is more impactful in this spot?
I want to say the Stadium. That keeps the damage a little bit in check from Terrapagos. You already went as far as knocking out both Cloths, right? So now, there we go. The damage, the big damage from Terrapagos. Like, if Terrapagos doesn't hit you with an Area 0, it's a 3-hit KO onto a Dragapult. So I feel like that's probably something big. However, the game is definitely dwindling down, right? It's going to come down to, I think the game's going to more likely come down to Cor finding energies in time than anything else related to the poison or big benches.
And this is where this poison could really come back to bite Cor in this spot. We look at how this damage is adding up on Terrapagos. It's going to take 200 from Phantom Dive and a 10 in between turns from poison. And if Cor decides to not move this Terrapagos out of the active spot, it will actually be knocked out in between turns, I believe, because of the way the damage works, right? So there should be 220 damage on that Terrapagos. So hopefully we'll get that fixed between both of these players, since there was the 10 from poison before and then the extra 10 now in between turns. And here we go now. I mean, Cor did play one of those switch cards earlier. Would need to find that other copy if he wants to heal it out of range from poison. And as we mentioned, that point of poisoning your own Pokemon, usually it is not a huge relevant factor, but it could come to bite Cor back in this spot.
Now I do see the switch card in hand. There's also the Latias, right, eliminating the retreat, so we can't just see this exchange happen very easily. And a single switch card doesn't put Terrapagos out of range from Phantom Dive. The big thing for Cor right now is finding a knockout before, with something that's not a two-price Pokemon, right? Especially not that Terrapagos. If Terrapagos is in the active, then Dragapult just attacks twice, or attacks once more, knocks out both, and that's it, right? So we should be seeing this Petrant come to the active, and I believe that would be enough damage, right, for Dragapult to be KO'd in between
10,
turns.
10 over, absolutely. So the Toxic Subjugation on the Petrant would put it so that the Dragapult would go to 330 damage on it in between turns.
I think it would be even more because of this Niesler, right? It's 8 damage counters, so... 8 damage counters in between turns?
It would be the... So just the... Or yes, it would be 8 in between turns. That's correct. Because
there we go.
So it's just going to be the pass. And actually choosing to not play the switch cart in this spot, holding on to that. I mean, with how things stand, it doesn't, as you said, make a huge difference in terms of winning the game or not. A boss's orders plus an energy is all Tiger needs. Let's see if he has the pieces here. Promoting this Iron Thorns makes it pretty likely that, you know, there is something like a future booster capsule somewhere here. And with the Arven in hand, and don't forget Counter Catcher, it looks like Tiger is just one piece away, a Psychic Energy away, and does have the Earthen Vessel. I think all the pieces might be here for Tiger to close things out.
Counter Catcher isn't prized, so he should be able to close this out. As you mentioned, Ethan, we can see the attack. Tiger just double checking to make sure the Counter Catcher is available. The capsule is already available as well in the hand, I think I saw. So Counter Catcher, bring up this Terrapagos, Phantom Dive, knock out both, and that's going to be the game. Tiger is our Game 1 winner.
So Tiger coming to showcase the power of Dragapult when these Pokemon get set up. It is just so hard in the current format to take efficient knockouts on Dragapult. It's thanks to that big 320 HP, and you gotta say it over and over again, the big plus side to why Dragon Pokemon are so successful in this format is the fact that they have no weakness, making counterplay very difficult in terms of dealing with those Pokemon.
And the one thing Cloth decks need and want to do is be super aggressive from the very beginning, start taking knockouts. And what's the one thing that didn't happen in this game? There was no knockout. So let's take a look at the replay of our Game 1, where the unfortunate start made it so that Cloth couldn't go super aggressive, did take a KO, but only on its second turn.
You got to wonder there if, you know, there was one more turn for Cor. Could he have taken a knockout on that Iron Thorns on the bench? Tiger really didn't get punished for that, so I'll be interested to see how the dynamic works in the upcoming games. But once Tiger got that Technical Machine Evolution, set things up just immediately, knew his strategy. Take 2 prizes on that second turn, and then just go 2-2 to win the game over those 2 turns. It was all thanks to Boss's Orders and Counter Catcher. These powerful gusting cards are what allow decks to thrive in the current format.
And these 2 decks specifically, right? These 2 decks are the up-and-coming decks, right? Clove, before Surging Sparks, was in no one's prediction. And the weird combination, right, of Iron Thorns plus Dragapult is also not something that was very common, but now it's gaining more and more popularity. But now we do see that Iron Thorns getting started and basically shutting down everything that Cor could do on turn 1. No Squawk and Seize, no instant charge. You can just bench some Pokemon, but you cannot use their abilities.
I mean, that's why the Rotom V is in this deck. It is strictly for going first to allow you to draw cards with instant charge. But now, because of that Iron Thorn's initialization ability, there is no use for this Rotom. It is not going to see essentially any impact at this point, as after the first few turns, you want to be ending your turn by attacking, not using that ability. So we'll have to see how Cor pivots to trying to use the cards he has in his hand under ability lock to get some sort of strategy going. It's going to be hard without having those powerful V and EX Pokemon's abilities at his disposal.
Now, there is one ability that Cor could use to draw some cards, and that's Regidrago's ability to draw up to 4. However, without Latias, getting that into the active, getting your hand down, it's just not going to be easy to use Dragon's Horde. So, taking a look at Cor's hand, I don't see much going for it, and it seems like this Iron Thorns could potentially slow down the game enough to just give Tiger all the time he needs in order to set up.
Setting up indeed, Tiger has opened a monster again. Energy in hand, Dreepy, Technical Machine Evolution, and that Precious Trolley is available, not hiding out in the prized cards. So once again, Tiger can leave this Iron Thorns in the active spot and use Technical Machine Evolution to power up his Pokemon in terms of evolving them straight from the deck. And if Tiger can find the pieces the following turn, can even threaten a turn 2 Phantom Dive going second. That is nothing more that you would want with this deck. That would just give a huge tempo advantage to Tiger in this matchup.
Amazing start. It's a dream start, right? Arven in hand, Iron Thorns in the active, completely shutting down everything that your opponent could possibly want. And that's what Iron Thorns does best, right? Slow down everyone to its pace. It wants to go slow, wants to go 1 energy per turn, wants to set up slowly, as we saw with the regular Iron Thorns deck that just plays 4 of them, or now in this version combined with Dragapult, just slow things down so that Dragapult can actually overcome the issue of setting up.
So I'll be interested to see here if Tiger chooses to get down the Toedscruel in this matchup. I do think it is a card that is worth having on your bench, since just eliminating Night Stretcher means that you give yourself the option to take an extra route in the matchup. Just deal with Cloths altogether and don't have to worry about them. Seems like just such a nice sense of security to have against this matchup in particular.
Yeah, not allowing your opponent to have that single prize Pokemon ready to go, but we're just going to see the Technical Machine Evolution here. No Toedscruel or Toedscruel in sight, so it doesn't seem like we're very interested in shutting down those Night Stretchers this time around either.
And now action is back on Cor. No V or EX Pokemon, no Pokemon with rule boxes can use their abilities as long as that Iron Thorns is in the active spot. Does find the Forest Seal Stone. That is an ability that can be used thanks to, a little quirk in the rules. That Forest Seal Stone is not an ability on the Rotom, so it can be used. And there's also that interesting one-of supporter in the hand, that Cypher Maniac's code breaking, and Regidrago plus Cypher Maniac. It's a strategy we've seen be effective in the Regigigas deck. It could be making a powerful impact here in this matchup, or we could just be discarding it off Ultra Ball. Seems like Cor's got a different idea in this spot.
I'm guessing it's going to be a Cloth, right? We have a Switch card in hand, then we Forest Seal Stone for research, and we hope we get a double Turbo and an Ancient Energy Booster Capsule, and that allows Cor to just take 2 prizes, as the Toxic Powder from Brute Bonnet is not from a Rulebox Pokemon, therefore it does work.
But that is the big ask, right? You're using that powerful Forest Seal Stone V-Star power, a once per game effect, just to grab a research to give yourself essentially 7 cards to find not only that double Turbo Energy, but let's not forget about that Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. Needs to also find that Pokemon. It's going to be a decent amount of cards to find, but that's sort of what you have to rely off of. You got to, believe in the cards a little bit when you're under ability lock and you don't have all these luxuries at your disposal.
Yeah, the players at the very top always want to try to minimize the lock factor, right? But there are many times where you just have to go for it and hope to draw what you need, and I think that's exactly what we are seeing here. The Switch card, the research, we need the combo of double Turbo and Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. If that is not found, that will put Cor in a very bad spot if Tiger can respond with a Crispin attachment into that Iron Thorns.
Does find one of the pieces, that Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, but no double Turbo Energy. It is not to be found in this spot. So the big question now for Cor, how do you pivot out of this position? Is there anything that you can do to maybe draw some more cards? You can't use Latias EX, that's shut down by the Iron Thorns. You don't have any more Switch cards available in the hand at least. And that Precious Trolley is not going to get a lot of impact since there isn't that Area 0 Underdepths in play yet. No Stadium has been found yet for Cor. So what do you do? Do you re-bench this Regidrago and just, reapproach the next turn? Or you can use something like Iron Bundle. We see it really having a strong effect to get out of that ability lock.
Yeah, that Hyper Blower ability coming from a non-rulebox Pokemon does mean that Iron Thorns needs to be switched, or is allowed to be switched out, and now we have abilities. Now we can Precious Trolley, maybe get Latias and another Cloth. We can Rotom draw, I guess, instant charge for a few extra cards, but I don't think we're attacking this turn, Ethan, at all.
That is the big question is, if this Rotom wasn't on the bench, if there was one more bench slot, then, Cor would have the pieces here to take this knockout. Could bench this Radiant Hisuian Sneasler and then use this final spot for the Pecharunt with Toxic Subjugation. But because there is no bench spots available, that's not going to be a possibility since you also would need the Latios EX to pivot this cloth out of the active spot. It has a 2 retreat cost. It's going to be difficult to move that cloth out.
Very, very difficult indeed. And yeah, without Area 0, you can see how restricted the cloth deck is, right? It wants a lot of bench spots for backup attackers and the poison package and the supporting Pokemon. But it's really difficult to do all of that when you don't have those 3 extra bench spots available.
And choosing to just, leave the bench spot open, only grabbing 1 Pokemon off of this trolley. And that's a really interesting, that is your 1 ace spec for the game, the 1 inclusion you have, and it was just used to grab a single basic Pokemon. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but the big question is, will this 30 damage, come back to matter? It definitely could. It's going to be very difficult, though, when your opponent just has such strong pieces in hand, immediately playing the Crispin to fully power up this Dracloak, and that Terra Orb can grab the Dragapult EX. All that's missing here is just a way to move this out of the active spot, and we'll see that Phantom Dive right away for Tiger.
Ideal setup for Tiger here. I mean, the Iron Thorns was sent to the bench, but there wasn't a lot of issue with that. Now, the rescue board is in the prize cards, therefore, we're probably not seeing an attack this turn, but I think if you're Tiger, you're feeling pretty good right here. Even if you go down 1 prize card, you probably always assume that's going to happen, right? However, that's fine. Yeah, you know your Dragapult will always do at least 2 Phantom Dives. I think that's the key to this matchup. Your big stage 2 that you dedicate a lot of resources to, is just going to get an attack off very easily twice, whilst you power up a backup 1.
And we'll see Ultra Ball get played, so, if Tiger wants, can just get another Dracloak online and just have so much card draw and consistency to his deck. A thing that Cor is really lacking with how the board has been set up so far and, how this cloth deck is built. It doesn't have the luxury of a support engine that lets you look at cards and keep 1 and put them to the bottom of the deck. It really relies off of, these niche basic Pokemon's abilities. The Regidrago that barely sees any play, that only fills your hand up to 4. Rotom ends your turn if you want to draw cards. So we could just see Tiger not only have the more powerful attacker, the one that can sustain and be stronger throughout the game, but also one that just, is more consistent in comparison to Cor and decides to just evolve and pass the turn. So while you do put that EX in play, you are essentially limiting yourself from 1 more ability from the Recon Directive on the following turn.
Makes sense to protect, right, your energy investments away from like a boss KO on your 2 energies. You could have also spread the energy around to try and make sure you're not punished, but the evolution, I think, is definitely worth it compared to the Recon Directive. You're just quite patiently waiting for this 3P to go down to the poison in between turns so that you can start pummeling your opponent's side of the board. And now Cor does have abilities available to him, does have that Luminous Sign ability to potentially find Colress's Tenacity, Colress's Tenacity, thank you, in order to find a stadium, in order to find a double turbo and start doing something. At least get ready for next turn, right? This 3P is gone from the poison, but you have the double turbo ready to go for your Terrapagos or potentially a backup Cloth.
Yeah, and this makes me wonder here, do you just find the Pecharunt and promote that to end the turn in this spot? It's definitely, a lot better Pokemon. Would be great to find, right, if that precious trolley wasn't used. And so this is the big debate. Is that extra 2 damage counters, or rather, extra 4 damage counters worth it in this spot if you were going to just take a knockout either way on this the following turn? It's a big question to think about. Now, there are still a lot of Pokemon in the hand, so, Trolley would have good use regardless, but with an Ultra Ball and a bunch of these basics, it seems Cor will have a good option to make things work either way, especially with free use of things like Night Stretcher in this spot.
Yep. Now, you can reuse Iron Bundle to have a better knockout. Probably means you knock out a Dracloak instead of a 3P, or you could just hold it, right, for the future. Now, the Pecharunt you mentioned was discarded in the very beginning, so that's why its ability wouldn't be able to be used unless we dedicate another Night Stretcher, right, into it. But yeah, I mean, this 3P is gone. I think right now you have to wonder what Cor wants to sacrifice, I guess, before or let go down in between turns, assuming this Dragapult is now about to start attacking.
It is just going to be leaving the Cloth active and taking the knockout thanks to the poison damage, so we'll just go ahead and fall to the discard pile. 3P, you put up a valiant effort. I think it's time for the big boss to get in here. Dragapult EX is all powered up and ready. And now it's just on Cor to see how he can find a way to come back to this game. Having the Iron Thorns on the bench is a great Pokemon to be able to maybe take a one-hit knockout on later in the game, but now Radiant Alakazam could become the star of the show as this poison damage from the Klawf slowly accumulating can be preserved and slowly put onto these bench Pokemon, allowing Tiger to have even more plays at his disposal during this mid to late game.
Now this is pretty cute because Tiger does have a Boss's Orders. If he decides to bring up this Terrapagos and hits it for Phantom Dive 200, right? Terrapagos would have 220 damage on it. So if Cor decided to self-poison that Terrapagos, then it would go down in between turns. So pretty nice use of the Radiant Alakazam there in order to set that play up. Of course, we could just see another Terrapagos in this spot and have that be the attacker, because as we've talked about, that extra damage from poison doesn't really make a difference. You're still 2-hit KOing every single time.
So we will see what the choice is. There are some juicy targets on the bench. That Lumineon V and Rotom both could be knocked out, but it is just going to be going after the Terrapagos, so leaving it with just 10 HP remaining, using Phantom Dive and choosing where to put these remaining 6 damage counters. Pablo, where would you like to see these damage counters be placed?
I would really like to see them just be stacked up into something, yeah, that eventually you know your opponent's not going to promote, and therefore it can always be targeted and eventually KO'd, right? Which is a perfect example of that Lumineon. 3 Phantom Dives, and it's gone, right? So your opponent has to, at some point, invest a switch card in order to retreat it. You know they're down 1, and Lumineon is not a Pokemon that you're going to be attacking with at all, right? So it's always going to be there, ready to be KO'd.
Yeah, no way to, remove the own Area 0. So if Tiger just says, hey, I'm okay with you having 8 bench Pokemon the entire game, if it means those liable support 2-price Pokemon stay on the bench, that's fine with me. Speaking of liable Pokemon, there's another Lumineon V in the hand for Cor. Maybe thinking about what supporter card is worth grabbing out of the deck. With the bench full now, of course, Iron Bundle could always be put into the discard pile. There's really not a lot of space for, some of these extra powerful Pokemon like Pheasantipede, like the Latias EX to have some pivoting power. What will we see be the choice? It is going to be an Arven, so once again, Cor can find out any item card and a tool card from the deck. Does still have access to some of those switch cards, which will be key in healing this damage off and trying to play around some of the math that Tiger is attempting to set up.
And interestingly enough, there is a copy of Lost Vacuum as we see hit the field. So he does have a way to remove his own Area 0 and therefore potentially remove all of this damage from play, right? It also means your damage output is very limited, but now you're more free to utilize Klawf as your attacker with the poison, because that's always going down, no problem. You're setting up the 2-hit KO, but you're preventing this Terrapagos from going down from the Painful Spoons or Phantom Dive residual damage.
And this begs the question here, Cor is at sort of an awkward spot, is at 5 prize cards. Is this a spot where, using Iron Bundle could have a lot of value? At worst, you're still taking a prize card, you're putting yourself onto even number, and at best, your opponent might just give you this Iron Thorns to knock out instead of, going for this 2-hit knockout early on, where, it's going to probably be better value to just get rid of one of these Pokemon on the bench. This is an interesting spot for sure. We're going to see the Lost Vacuum be played first.
Yeah.
So that will get rid of all of those V Pokemon on the bench with less than 200 HP. So we've got the Rotom, that's gone, and then both Lumineon V also hitting the discard pile. But now with the Area 0 gone, there's no way to put the damage back in this spot.
Yeah, this does mean now it's only 130 damage total with Terrapagos. I mean, it still sets up the 2-hit KO from a follow-up Klawf, but we can see a Painful Spoons just take this KO immediately before Tiger has even attacked, and then you have to give up something else as well, probably the Draco, maybe the Iron Bundle. So very awkward spot. It does feel like Cor is trying to survive rather than figuring out a way to win. He's just trying to take away threats or options for Tiger to knock out, right? But in doing so, it's really difficult to deal with the one big threat, which is this Dragapult.
And now the question for Tiger is, how do you want to play this turn out? There's always the option of, using Iono first, drawing the 6 cards, and then taking the knockouts so you take more prize cards. Or we could just see the Arven. I guarantee the energy cards. And I think that's what Tiger's really looking for here. Doesn't want to take any chances, can just grab an Earthen Vessel out of the deck, or even thinking about grabbing Counter Catcher in this spot to maybe target a different Pokemon on the bench. and just finish off this Terapagos with the benched damage counters from Phantom Dive instead of, using the Alakazam just to take the knockout on itself.
Yep, both options seem fine. I really would love to see this Brute Bonnet get taken down, though. That's like the one option, or that's the main option which Cor has in order to increase his damage output, right? So I would love to see that get taken down. There's merit to the Cloth as well, but we are going to see that toxic Brute Bonnet get taken down right now.
And 3 prize cards here getting taken as well. That will mean Tiger is just one step closer in this spot, taking the knockout. Actually going to just choose to use the Radiant Alakazam's ability first to take 2 prize cards, see what else is available. And the big piece here, though, we have to continue to think about is Tiger did not find an energy attachment. So if there's a world where this Dragapult EX goes down, Tiger could find, a little bit of a struggle in terms of setting another Pokemon up, but that's a problem for next turn. For now, Tiger goes down to just 3 prize cards left and puts a lot of pressure in terms of closing this game out in just 2 turns from now.
Yeah, with a Crispin in hand, I think of the prizes, feeling pretty okay. But as you mentioned, he didn't have that before. He only had a Lightning Energy, which was attached to this Iron Thorns, which can become an attacker in a pinch, right? It can take down Clove. It also shuts down recovery options, such as Serendipity. But that Era Zero, I feel like, hurt Cor a lot more than Tiger, because now, sure, you have another one, but you don't have Latias anymore. You don't have other Terapagos. You don't have, I don't know, more resources available. However, we have the immediate recovery of the Brute Bonnet, the tool, the next Terapagos, so not bad, right? Maybe it was worth it.
Not bad at all. You got to keep fighting in your spot no matter where you are in terms of the game. Can't give up now. You're 1 game down, just 15 minutes remaining on the clock. Cor will play this Nest Ball. Bench can now be expanded to 8 total Pokemon, thanks to Terapagos EX being in play. And it looks like, considering, that extra card draw off Serendipity EX can always be a liability, though, thanks to, the combination of Painful Spoons plus a Gusting card means you don't have to wait those 2 turns. Serendipity could go down in as little as a single turn. Cor does feel it's worth just having extra card draw at his disposal when putting down what could be considered in this spot a liability.
Yeah, the key missing piece right now is a double turbo. The math actually works out perfectly to where if you attack with unhinged scissors, and there's the last card, the double turbo, so Cor will be able to get a knockout here. The math is perfect thanks to that ability of Radiant Sneasler. Those extra damage counters will allow Cor to get the knockout. Now he does need to retreat into Clove, does need to use that Night Stretcher in his hand to get back the Latias in order to be able to pull this off. And sure, he'll get 2 prizes, but the question is, how do you deal with the incoming Iron Thorns? How do you deal with an incoming Dragapult TX most likely? That's going to be a problem, but for now, he's going to be able to pull this off, or not.
No, I don't think he has the access to Latias EX. It's not in the discard pile. Can't find a way to move this Regidrago. And now all of those aspirations, all of those, visions for being able to find a way to close this game out, those doors shut completely. Tiger's been given essentially a free turn on top of what has already been an extremely solid start. Guaranteed can take a prize card this turn, and with these bench damage counters, can set up numerous ways to win the game on the following turn. A gift, a present, Christmas gift here given to Tiger in this game too.
I don't know why I was so sure the Latias X was discarded after the stadium. The Air Zero got removed, but I was probably wrong. If it was in the deck, then yeah, there was no way to find it and no way to have a follow-up knockout.
Yeah, instead of grabbing Latias, grab the Serendipity, since
to grab energy.
Find the energy card, which was found, but sometimes you need multiple pieces, not just the one that you're searching for. This Tiger has so much time, so much leisure in terms of closing this game out. Can draw even more cards with the Dracloaks. Can, of course, use a supporter card for turn, even a disruptive supporter, something like the Iono to search through the deck a little bit more, funnel through some of these cards, and of course those recon directives are perfect at finding the pieces you need and putting the ones you don't on the bottom of your deck.
One thing I would like to see is the Crispin get used before, unless you're planning on using Boss's Orders, of course, but I'd love to see Crispin be used. That way you thin out the energies and you guarantee that you can attach one, right? Because Crispin, if there are only energies of the same type, or there's only one energy available in the deck, you don't get that extra attachment.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfectly fine opportunity to just, use Crispin in a spot like this and not use Boss. You can take the one prize knockout onto the Regidrago and then spread damage counters everywhere so that Alakazam in combination with Phantom Dive would close the game out. Instead, Tiger just wants to take the one prize card right now. Go after this Pheasantipity. You can either just take the knockout now or, just leave the 200 and wait for Alakazam to knock this out later. Will instead just move one damage counter from the Sneasler onto this active, and Tiger will, after this turn, be one prize card away from winning this series and advancing to 5-0.
Yeah, just go for the aggressive move. Never a bad thing. You also have the Dragapult already in hand. You still have the Crispin available, of course. So yeah, you put yourself down to one prize card, one more Phantom Dive ready to go in order to win this game. And now Cor does have the energy to be able to attack. Terapagos is the only Pokemon that can withstand a hit, but realizes he's out of options, and Tiger will be... Oh, wait, what? Was he not conceding? He was, right? Yeah. Tiger is a winner.
I think we're just confirming everything that happens in this spot. Looks like everything should be settled out.
Yeah.
I think we are all set. Congratulations, though, to Tiger. There's the match slip. Tiger advances to 5-0 with Dragapult EX. It's just too much for this cloth deck.